The 555 towers. You've seen them, we've used them, and I've milked just about every last drop of content from its essence. But we're not done. How far can each 555 go, and more importantly, how do they rank against each other? I've heard your cries as well as the cries of my PC's processor. But the price of true wisdom is grave, and I have sacrificed many days where I could have been touching grass, all for the sake of your education. But we all know that I wouldn't have gone outside anyways, as I have adapted to the inner walls of a controlled environment, and I am now allergic to grass. Unlike the Dart Monkey, who previously took a buffalo stroll out in Monkey Meadow, all the way up to round 138 before consuming suspicious stimulants to beef his way to round 187. But just the other day, the man marched 159 rounds through the forest of logs, and ordered 2 sides of Golden Village with a large laggy shake up to round 221. Meeting his match to a fortified Black Titan. These Titans tried to drill their way through the dig site of Quarry in the past, but the ultimate ace shredded the metal from high in the sky before losing out to the fortified King of the Seas on round 140. Nowadays, the plane soars solo up to around 138 until calling in golden support to bullet hose its way to a whopping 242. On the opposite end, the buffer was in need of a buff himself, running out of stamina on round 25, only to lose again to 138 after a hefty golden investment, doing much worse than previous months of round 152. A perfect example of the dangers that come from long-term drinking. Throwing his ranks from Bloon to Bloon, the Boomer dominated any Moab that dared cross its path up to 169 before the aid of the gods, which was 1 round higher than in the new buffless test at round 168. But the Gold Lord's blessing boosted the tower to the same heights as the Dart Monkey at round 221, exactly 20 rounds higher than its previous score of 201. Another dominatrix in the Moab department is the Sniper with its cripple Moab ability, previously getting them to a round of 167 on its own and 200 when buffed, which doesn't change much in the new test, as most of the damage comes from the Ricochet Shrapnel combo that needs lots of group balloons to shine. But since the tower almost instantly deletes anything other than a bad, there was not enough protective rubber to ensure a 100% chance of defending, resulting in a first loss to round 180 solo and round 204 after divine intervention. As for our first cannon junkie, the Buccaneers seemed to love crashing my game every time I tried to crosspath it, so I wasn't able to get a good test in. So to keep things fair, I'm going with his OG score of round 99 solo and round 226 when fully cracked out in the middle of the park path. The Dartling, with an old score of round 135 and 191 respectively, barrels its way to round 129 on its own, before consuming the gold to single-handedly gain the most projectiles I've ever seen a tower release at once, becoming a stacking minigun of lasers and pellets that pierced their way to round 249. It was really cool seeing a DDT try to slip past, only to loop back into the line of destruction that was this gunner. However, just like the boat, the engineer was another man who couldn't get the gears fully in operation, as I wasn't able to fully crosspath him with the G Village this time either. So his old stats of round 103 unbuffed and a solid round 252 when fully energized will have to suffice, taking the top spot on our list so far. And even though the crosspath quote-unquote works, the glue still doesn't stack yet, so it wore out by round 100 again. But this time it did manage to get some extra glide power from Goldilocks, pushing its max round to 119, which is still not that much. And just like the NG, the Heli also didn't want to stack, but this one didn't bother me much because I don't really like the Heli anyways. And I'm not sure why, because it's not that bad of a tower in itself, but I just don't like it. We'll stick with its old stats again for round 99 solo and 145 buffed. Now the Ice was the first tower I ever tested using this ultimate crosspathing mod by Doombubbles, but I can barely call it a test since I only really got to round 100 before moving on to making those short hero videos with the Spike Factory. The first bad proved to be a bit too hot to handle for Frozone, but with a little extra knob tweaking, the AC unit kept the entire map cooled down until round 168 with an absolutely insane radius. Turning up the heat, the mortar covered the entire inner map with a circle of radiation up to round 119 like it did before, but its old round of 152 when fully fueled became easily eclipsed by the full moon of golden explosions from the Gold V, now reaching a blast height of round 218 on balance. The Ninja, being a master of the shadows, easily became the master of lag, as it was the first tower to cause my Bloons game to cap out my PC's RAM, which I didn't even know was possible until testing this Grandmaster lag machine. To make matters worse, it did way worse than in its old test, this time getting to round 103 solo and 213 juiced up, whereas last time it got to 98 solo but up to round 252 with his clan's full support. I'm blaming my hardware on this one, so I'll go with his old stats for the rankings. For this next one, I'm only adding it because people said I forgot it, like it was gonna do anything special crosspath, that being the village. First off, it wouldn't even fully crosspath, it would just crash my game instead. Secondly, only one path does any real damage. And thirdly, it only got to round 95 without buffs, but it definitely did surprise me by reaching round 180 when buffed by its golden child. And it ran really smooth too, but that's mainly because it was just like testing testing a regular 5th tier rather than a modded tower. Taking a quick dip back into the waters, the sub, with its bugged out crosspath, declared anything made of rubber to be a national threat worthy of an automatic first strike, regardless of Bloon class or location. It pretty much takes the first strike ability of its middle path 4th tier and merges it with its middle path 3rd tier when upgraded in the correct order. In both the old and new tests, it got to round 104 without buffs, but with a little bit of gold, the old gen managed to terraform the terrain up to around 241 on logs and 257 on resort, whereas for the new generation, these numbers changed to only 244 on resort, but up to around 261 on logs. But any previous visual clutter we've seen would be nothing compared to the god of lag himself, the 555 Druid, who previously reached rounds 128 solo and 191 spark, but has now pushed the bounds of my PC on logs with a measly round 138 unbuffed and an 8-hour stretch to round 261 at full charge. And for a bit of bonus lore, this was one of the 3 towers where I slept and woke up to it still running. Think you can guess what the other 2 were? As for the next PC melter, we have the Wizard. It's one of my favorite towers in the base game, but its modded version is absolute dog water. Not only can it not crosspath right, but it was one of the laggiest towers out of this batch, taking around 8 minutes per round near the time it lost. Just like before, without buffs it hit round 111, and with an extra bit of golden lag, it used to cap out at round 172, but unfortunately pushed its way to 201 this time. It still looked kinda cool though, so I give it 3 out of 10. The Bomb Tower, wanting to prove its dominance over all things balls related, managed to reach round 168 on its own, before using a bit of golden power for an explosive jump to round 268, a whole 100 rounds after, now becoming the king of anything balls and also everything rounds. That is, until I tested the big 3. For the tag, I actually forgot just how majestic this beast of a tower actually is, mainly from the combination of its top and middle paths. In both the old and new trials, it only burned bright up to round 140, but with some golden firewood, it had reached up to round 192 back then, which became round 220 now. However, I knew it had way more in store, so I pulled this fiery angel over into logs for a retest, where its beautiful flame blazed to round 281 before being snuffed out for good. As for the poster hero of the towers, the Super Monkey previously battled its way to round 144 on its own, before getting help from the Golden League to soar to round 297. This would become round 151 as the solo hero, but in today's Metropolis, the Goldenville's VTSG upgrade wasn't compatible, since the Super was already one, causing my game to crash every time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that sweet attack speed bonus from the final village upgrade, so I did multiple tests. While the base temple reached round 151 on its own, the vengeful temple with no buffs rose to 223, which is only 1 round less than the regular temple with full sacrifices and the Golden League. As for the VTSG, I added the Golden Squad all the way up to the upgrade right before the one that would crash my game, pushing the tower to soar all the way to round 316. And I gotta say, this is one of the smoothest game performances out of these towers, and I genuinely enjoyed watching it go. Since the last 4 upgrades on the Goldenville's top path are very powerful, adding damage bonuses and up to a 500% attack speed increase, I bet it definitely would have reached another 80 rounds or so, if it was compatible. But not to worry, because we now have to talk about the true king, the true hero, carrying the rounds and also my entire Bloons career, the 555 Spike Factory, a tower that makes spikes and shoots them out on the map like a, well, Spike Factory. In the old test, I put him at the very back of the map to make sure the permas last the longest, launching its spikes to stop the balloons all the way up to round 272 by himself, before breezing up to round 300 with buffs, before I manually ended it due to the immense lag. Well y'all, some lags never change. However, since most of the damage was coming from the explosions, I placed our breadwinner at the very center of the map for maximum output. This only pushed him a couple more rounds past the last attempt at around 274, but one major thing I noticed when I added the Golden Village was that the more buffs this guy had, the more lag came as well. This is a clip of round 300 in real time. This is it sped up. To put this into perspective, after I buffed him, each round first took about 8 minutes to beat, which increased to around 45 minutes by the end. So after letting my PC run overnight twice, it averaged about 2 rounds per hour, or 40 rounds per day. This is the clip of round 408. I sped it up a lot, by the way. With the fortified bads not even getting halfway, it's safe to say that the Spike Factory can probably push another 50 to 100 rounds. Now normally I would let it run, but since my PC's RAM and graphics card were both being capped, I would rather have the ability to edit and post more videos instead of letting this one test take another week. So I ended the test here. I know we went over too many numbers for the average Bloons enjoyer to remember, so here's a neat graphic I made, full of all the important details. And most of these towers each took over 3 hours to record, and using the gold village with the modded towers wouldn't let me redo the last round, so it was hard to get the footage of the entire round lost when the tower did lose. So I just used the screenshots instead. Now this is the part where I say that I had a fun time doing this, but I really didn't. It was quite boring actually. So while recording this, I also worked on videos from Minecraft and Terraria when I could, which you should totally check out once they get posted. The links will be in the description. I also have a Discord, but I don't really use it, and the same goes for the rest of my socials, but who knows? Maybe if you shoot me a message, I might respond in a month or so. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you like this type of stuff, cause it's what I do most. And thanks for watching. See ya.